Hello. Yes, I know it's been a while. I actually kind of thought I would look completely different to when I filmed this video because I have changed so much over the years. But I somehow went full circle and now I look just exactly like I looked in 2021. Today I'm going to talk about something that's only recently come to my attention. The shows that I used to watch as a kid don't send the best messages.
Well, that's just something you do and you're gonna stop doing that. He's gonna stop doing that.
I mean, who's surprised? So before you go and get a solid dose of nostalgia, be careful what you're watching.
Stop doing that.
The more you try to excuse and continue to consume something, the more likely it is that you're going to regurgitate the same opinion. For example, if I were to continuously joke that women are the superior sex, even though I didn't initially believe that, I would start to gain that same mindset because you joke about something enough that you start to believe it's actually true. Something that has bothered me is when writers create characters written to be loved, which are conventionally bad people and are written to say bad things.
No, I can't do this. Believe me, I really want to. But I kind of have a girlfriend.
I have these views on a lot of lovable television shows like The Big Bang Theory, Atypical, and Friends. Characters in these shows are written to have flaws, but are portrayed to be lovable characters that often create the audience to fantasize about what it would be like to be them. A lot of these characters are involved in homophobia, sexism, misogyny, and racism, and then are typically glorifying these things for the sake of comedy.
Elizabeth here is a student, and we're dating.
This is vastly different from shows like The Office or Always Sunny, which are portraying unlikable characters that are written to be hated so you don't want to have the same opinions as them.
If I had a gun with 2 bullets and I was in a room with Hitler, Bin Laden, and Toby, I would shoot Toby twice.
Michael from The Office is inherently racist, but is in return received glares, uncomfortable silence, and lack of appreciation, as opposed to Ross from Friends, who will make a sexist or homophobic remark and is rewarded by the laugh track.
Here's my boy, and here's his Barbie.
The audience and the writers excuse this behavior by creating the situation to be a lovable, funny moment rather than just a, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, like they do with Michael in The Office. Now, it's one thing being 20 and being socially aware of the shows that I mentioned before, and I can acknowledge that it's bad, and another being 8 years old and having an impressionable mind that doesn't really understand what's right and wrong yet, to the point where you experience 10 years of internalized misogyny and wonder why you never stand woman, but Harry Styles was an icon, legend, and a star.
This doesn't happen to people like me very often, and
Growing up, you like to believe that these shows you loved did something to cheer you up or get you out of your bored days, with jokes you don't fully understand and teenagers getting into silly situations, wanting you to be a teenager and grow up quicker to become a teenager. I miss being a kid. As we grow up, we ignore the not so subtle bad jokes.
It's time to strip and make the bed. Okay, that's what poor people do.
Just hoping that it's only adults understand them, which is right to a degree, but children have impressionable minds. They are easy to meld into what you want them to believe. Everyone by now is more or less aware of Dan Schneider's creepy behind the scenes and how he exploited children for his own sexual pleasures and overworked young kids or young teenagers. Dan Schneider created a space where you can no longer rely on these TV shows for anything but nostalgia. But if we just drop all of Dan Schneider's creations and then look at Nickelodeon TV shows, it'll probably be fine, right? Because he was the only one that was like recently cancelled, right? A lot of the Nickelodeon shows in like the early 2000s and the early 2010s had some like kind of weird intentions added into the show for comedy. Whether that was boys harassing girls, making homophobic jokes, etc, etc. Ha 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 ha, it's funny because he could be gay! All of this is linked to multiple non-Dan Schneider shows like SpongeBob SquarePants and Ren and Stimpy, but the one I want to talk about today is actually Big Time Rush. Let's jump right into this episode. Big time break. This episode starts like any other teen sitcom. The four boys are lounging around in some pool chairs by the pool, trying to retell stories that have happened to them, but they're kind of always together. So when they tell a story, they're like, yeah, I know that happened because I was there, or I've heard you've said that story a bajillion times. And they get to the point where they realize they need to be separated from each other because they just know each other too well and are getting bored of each other. So this episode splits into 4 different stories, and that's when it starts to get a bit interesting. James's side story is definitely the warmest of them all. He doesn't do anything that's bad like the other guys do, where it's like that's kind of questionable. However, he does experience something questionable. So James splits off to kick off his acting career with some help from Camille. Their audition comes for their sci-fi, fantasy, their audition. Camille blows up the room with a magic trick.
Nailed it!
James is scheduled in next, so he goes in. He does a pretty poor job at reading lines. He's not a very good actor.
Laughs evilly.
But the director doesn't care about that at all. She was like, forget it. Drop the lines. Just stand and smile. So they just spend the session recording James because he's pretty? Imagine if they did that in actual, auditions. Honestly, that probably is how it goes for some people. Pretty privilege is major in Hollywood. Then they both get a phone call and it results in James getting in and Camille didn't get in. What I found bizarre is that he didn't get the role he auditioned for. He got the role of a warlock with washboard abs. So kind of insinuating that it's a hot warlock that shows off his abs a lot. It doesn't even sound like it was a character to begin with though, because if James knew that was a character, surely he would have just gone for that one because it was all about his abs. So it makes me think that she created this character for James to be in it because she thought he was attractive. It's giving like Aaron Taylor Johnson and the director wife that he married or got with when he was 18. But note that James's character was meant to be 16 in the first season when this one was. So, bit weird. James is nice though and acts as if he also got rejected for the sake of Camille, and that's kind of the end of his story. Carlos's story starts with him realizing that he doesn't know where his helmet is. So his dad literally knocks down their apartment door and is like, "G'day, son." Carlos's dad is a police officer. So the first place they go to look for Carlos's helmet is Mr. Bitters' office to look at the security cameras. Mr. Bitters is bitter.
What? I'm busy. Come back never.
That causes Carlos's dad to start to become aggressive, but Carlos is like, no, calm down, this is a minor situation, I got this. Talks to him, but when he doesn't get what he wants, he's like, yeah, dad, go for it. Actually physically abuse him and scare him into giving me what I want, which works. They get to look at the security camera and they find out that Mr. Bitters is actually the first suspect who stole his helmet. And so his dad instantly staples him back to the desk. It's a nice tie. And as they watch the footage, Carlos's dad very nicely says,
"Remember, son, everyone's guilty until proven innocent."
Which is... When Mr. Bitters becomes their first suspect, he gets stapled to the wall. It causes him to talk, so they get something out of it. This makes them find out that there's a thief in the building somewhere. In comes Tyler,
Hide me! My mom wants me to be in a diaper commercial!
who they think might be their next suspect, but instead just gives a little insight on child actors that are only there because their mum wants to be famous and is living her dream through her child to get money, fame, and the dream, I guess. Kind of reminds me of someone. But anyway, they quickly move on to their next suspect, which is Bob, the janitor cleaning guy. And instead of just going up to him and asking him, hey, did you take my helmet? His dad decides he's going to tackle him to the ground.
I should have kept my helmet on.
Interesting choice. When they find out that Bob wasn't the one that stole his helmet, Lightning is revealed to be the culprit, which is like a dog, and then he gets his helmet back. Then we go on to Kendall, which is probably my favourite of the least because Kendall does the worst thing but gets rewarded the most. After Kendall splits off, it cuts to him spying on the girl that he has a crush on, Joe. His sister calls out to Joe, which causes this awkward conversation to happen.
I have the day off, and I thought maybe we could hang out?
You know I have a boyfriend.
Which is awesome.
Joe has a boyfriend. No! You know, most people's brains is they hear boyfriend and they're like, cool, we'll just be friends. Kendall obviously pushed.
And it would be wrong of me to ask a girl out who's already taken. Right?
They went as friends to judo training, to which Kendall decides to flirt with Joe, and Joe has to remind him, I have a boyfriend. Cuts to Joe sitting at the pool with a drink. Kendall swoops in, gets a straw, puts it in her drink, starts sharing it with her, even though she probably wanted the drink to herself. Kind of weird, if you ask me. So she goes, I've got a boyfriend. After this, he buys her a heart-shaped pizza, which is just like absurd. He's just met this girl and he knows that she has a boyfriend. This is the part where Kendall's sister overhears Joe say that she doesn't in fact have a boyfriend. She just wants to focus on her career and doesn't want to date at the moment, which is completely valid. So Kendall's sister is quick to intervene and tells Kendall that Joe has in fact been lying about her boyfriend, and Kendall takes this as Joe's just playing him.
She's been playing me this whole time?
And instead uses this information against her to persistently interrogate who her boyfriend is, so she cracks. I guess he can be like, oh, you don't have a boyfriend, now you have to date me? Like, is that his outcome? So he interrogates him to the point where she anxiously says that her boyfriend's actually visiting her today, and so she has to bribe someone into being this fake boyfriend to get Kendall to stop flirting with her.
Trevor, right? Right. Ha! No! I'm Trenton. Trout Hats. Trixie!
Travis!
This causes an argument between Joe and Kendall, and Joe's mad because Joe doesn't want a boyfriend, and Kendall's mad because he doesn't want to date a girl that lies. But it doesn't matter because Joe doesn't want a boyfriend. So, like, you don't need to date her. You don't have to worry about her lying to you when you're dating because she doesn't want to date you. I say all that, but then they go on a freaking date anyway because persistence is key, I guess.
Do you want to go to the movies sometime?
Yeah, I'd like that.
If they say no the first time, maybe they won't the third time you ask. So try that. Third time's a charm.
I don't think I completely get the whole teenage dating thing.
Neither, Katie. Neither.
Boyfriend?
Now let's calm down a little bit and follow Logan's quest. He wants to meet and listen to his favourite author talk about this book that's called Math is Hot, and apparently you have to be really smart to read it to understand it or whatever. He finds out that he can't watch this lecture or meet or anything like that because it's at an all-girls school and they don't let any boys in, so she only appeals to a female audience for some reason. So Logan heads home and exclaims,
Man, I wish I was a girl. Oh, no.
He explains the situation that he's going through to Mrs. Knight, and she's like, well, I'll just change her into a girl. She dresses him up as a girl. After that, very easily gets in the girls' school, which is great. He passes, I guess. It's like every trans person's dream, so good work, Logan. He is almost caught, though, because he calls this author gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Smart. I mean, she's really smart.
That can't be a girl. She's attracted to the lecturer. Oh, that can't be right. Why did I watch so much of this show? Logan very quickly realizes that actually this author is very sexist towards men. Only girls can read and understand her book because she hasn't come across a single man that has opened her book and understood it, which is kind of insane to me because, like, what would have been in that book? The book's called Math is Hot. What's in the book that makes her so intelligent? That makes her, like, mind-blowingly intelligent? Ah, yes. XC plus 4A over 2C divided by... I don't know anything about math. Since they're saying that there's no single man that has understood the book, Logan gets quite defensive and he reveals his gender, that he was a boy and he understood the book, which is fine. What's not fine is that the girls all stand up and beat him till he's bruised and his dress is ripped because he's a boy. The then the boys all come back together and realize they've got so much to talk about from their very eventful days. But Logan comes through the door very disheveled, wrapped and like bloodied and bruised. They're like, Logan needs to go first, but he's so worn out that he just faints. And that's the end of the episode. So if we just reassess the episodes that we saw, James got sexualized and objectified by a woman director, and in reward didn't get any acting gig and just got to be a good friend. Carlos's dad threatened and went over the top for something so small, but Carlos got his helmet back in reward. Kendall harassed a girl into going on a date with him, and in reward ends up dating the girl later on. He got exactly what he wanted. And Logan just went through hell, actually. So that's Big Time Break. The moral of the story that I picked up on was never give up. Unless you're a boy, because boys are dumb. Boys are so stupid. That's all for this video. Before I go though, I should warn you that there are